All right, everybody, hang tight. We're going to start the meeting here in just a little bit.
Seats, people, let's start. Welcome. I trust everybody had a nice holiday season. It's good to be back. Do we have any new members here this week? This month, I mean? Is anybody here for the first time? No new people? How about upgrades? Did anybody upgrade this last month? All right. That's what I like to see.
KK7OXD and got my general last month. Yeah.
Good work. Good work. All right, onward. Let's see. Got a couple of announcements for you. One of our very good friends who's been a member of this club for a very long time, Morris Farmer. Morris was the president of this club just prior to me. He was also instrumental in the remote station at Leamington. And he passed away last month on December 24th. He will be missed. He was a very good friend to the club, to me in particular. The last conversation I had with him, he said, you know, Marv, you need to get the engineers on the board. We have a couple of engineers that are kind of on the sidelines, and Morris felt extremely strongly that they should be voting board members. So I mentioned last time we met that we would vote on that. So it is proposed that we create 2 board voting positions for our 2 existing engineers. We can do it by show of hands. How many are in favor? Okay, is anybody opposed? Then it carries. Thank you. Let's see. Yeah, you know, we voted last time whether to raise the dues or not, and you collectively all, at least the ones that were here, voted that we not raise the dues. And I think that's just fine. But I've gotten a little bit of feedback, some complaints about that. So, if you are one of those in this room here that were disappointed that we did not raise the dues, I would like to point out that we are now a 501c3, and you can pay whatever extra you want. Rick, what do we have in the library today?
Well, I had, when I came in, 3 copies of the Nano V&A book. So if you're interested in that, let me know, because I am sold out. Also have a book from the library here called the Official Raspberry Pi Handbook 2025. If you are interested in my pursuing getting copies of this, let me know. This is available here at the meeting if you want to scan through it. But it's full of mostly 2-page explanations of any number of kinds of projects. It is not ham radio specific. It is Raspberry Pi specific. I still have a few of the sale books here if you want to come look at them. I have a little white tab in the top. And I think that's it for the book table. If I could mention one little thing, if you are interested in the Great Salt Lake, there is a film screening on the 15th of this month at Cathedral of the Madeleine. It is free. There's a flyer on the back table. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Are there any other announcements that I either were not aware of or forgot to mention? Board members? Nothing? All right. Well then, let's go to our program. This is a program that I have been really looking forward to. I attended a seminar on this network when I think it was when I was at the Hamfest in Albuquerque, and I was so impressed. I've been just dying to get these guys on board here. So we have Willem Schroeder, AC OKQ from Rocky Mountain Ham Radio Backbone, and he is going to explain it to us. Member of Rocky Mountain Hams, I believe. It'll cover the design, the implementation, and the application of the RM Ham microwave backbone. This backbone extends from one edge of Colorado on the east to the other edge of Colorado on the west, up to Wyoming, down to New Mexico, and now, if they have made this next little piece, down into Texas. It's really an amazing system. It's based on standard internet protocol technologies. About 250 sites, but I believe it's grown since we had that information. They'll tell us, I guess. It's all 5 gigahertz amateur and ISM band. Repeaters are linked using All-Star Link. And I'm going to stop there. He can tell us the rest. So, Willem, I'll turn it over to you and whoever else you have there with you that's going to help us.
Yes, good afternoon. I have with me here John Maxwell, who is the president of RMHAM, but he's also president of HamCon Colorado. So I'll ask him to jump in and tell you a little bit about that before we get started. You're muted, John.
Thank you. I haven't learned how to use Zoom, and I use it every day. I'm John Maxwell, W0VG. As Willem said, I am the chairman of HamCon Colorado. We are going to be handling the Rocky Mountain Division Convention in Grand Junction, Colorado, October the 23rd through 26th of this year. And I can pretty much guarantee you that we will have a presentation on this network that'll knock your socks off. So if you're interested, hamconcolorado.org is the URL. I encourage you to visit it. It's got a bit of information on it, and we're going to be opening up registration around February 1st. What you're going to see from RM Ham, it's a 501c3 just like you guys, and we do crazy stuff like building microwaves throughout the state of Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, and we're trying to figure out what we can do through anywhere else to help folks out. With that, Willem, I'll turn it over to you.
Did you want to just cover the background slides here?
Oh, sure. Ham Radio a few years ago became an ARRL special service club because we do training and events. We do Rocky Mountain Ham University one weekend a month, and that's live via Zoom and YouTube. Anybody's invited, no fees for that, just show up. We don't ask for dues at any time. We try to get folks to put their support into the club with their time. And their time focuses on emergency services, how to bring better tools to the Aries/Oxcom community and create off-the-shelf stuff that helps out in emergency situations. Our microwave network is somewhat a co-op. We are using sites and intellectual property from the Colorado Connection, which is the statewide linked VHF system. Colorado Repeater Association, Longmont Amateur Radio Club, Northern Colorado Amateur Radio Club. We basically bring them point-to-point linking for their network throughout the state. And it's significantly better because we're actually able to manage the network now. And we're not dealing with Did that repeater go down? I think it went down. I heard of anybody. Now the telemetry is there and it makes it much easier for us. Back in the early days in 2006, 2007, and we were the ones that forced a lot of folks to wake up and pay attention to the fact that DMR was not legal on the ham bands, and we worked with the league to try to create a way to get it legal. So we've spent a whole lot of time to try to pull that off. As I said, Rocky Mountain Ham University, when is that coming up, Willem? Is that
2 weeks.
2 weeks? It's 2 weeks. rmham.org is our website. It's got links to Rocky Mountain Ham University. And this month, if I believe, it is 3D printing, correct?
That's correct. 3D printing. Next week is NerdFest. NerdFest is just a bunch of people talking about really nerdy topics. So 20-minute, short 20-minute or so presentations. And then in March, it's about antennas.
Very good. With that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So as the introduction said, we're using the backbone as basically an IPv4 universal transport mechanism. So what that gives us the ability to do is when links fail, the built-in protocols that's part of IPv4 allows us to reroute that traffic so that it can reach its final destination. To implement this, we use commercial off-the-shelf equipment. The 5 gigahertz and 60 gigahertz bands are typically where everything is, since we've kind of lost the 3 gigahertz band. And then at each site, we try to use equipment that is IP enabled. So the repeaters themselves, we can talk to the repeater and find out how it's functioning. And then we've got all of the other things that you can do, control power at the site, check the state of the solar power systems, have security systems, because we have had some problems with break-ins, that we can run security cameras. We provide a VoIP phone so that you can call for help if you're at the site and your cell phone doesn't work, and basically do all kinds of additional techniques. And of course, in order to, or our goal in doing all of this is basically to provide linking of repeaters. So the digital repeaters by themselves, of course, automatically support the site-to-site connections via IP. If you use something like P25, you can kind of shoehorn it into IP. And then for analog systems, we rely mostly on a system called All Starlink that you're probably familiar with to do all of the linking. Of course, we do have the ability to log into all of these sites. And we have typically both AC and DC power controls that we can turn things on and off remotely. And of course, we can SSH into the various devices and get their status and check on health and all of those kinds of things. We also use a network monitoring software called Observium that I'll show you here in a few minutes, that we get things like continuous monitoring of voltages, the state of charge, all of those kinds of things, so that we can keep an eye on the health of the system and try to find problems before they occur. Here's a slide that basically gives you an idea of what our network looks like. Obviously, it's an older slide. This is from the beginning of 2023, so it's a couple of years old, and it doesn't show all of the sites. But essentially, what we try to do is cover the entire network by providing access to every site at least two ways. So you'll see that there are lots of loops designed into the system so that if we lose a link, and I'll demonstrate an example here in a minute, we can still get to all of those sites. Now, there are some really long, skinny arms that go out we have only one way in and out of that. Water Dog, which is on the western slope, is an example of that. And Durango as well. But typically, we have it set up so that we have redundancy on our end, so those sites connect to multiple points on the RMM network. But of course, if we lose the internet connectivity at the site itself, you're kind of dead in the water. But basically, our network design is that we were trying to get to every site by at least 2 different routes. And so that if one or the other of those fail, we have another way that should get back into it. We're trying to avoid any single points of failures. So even our main site at Thornton, we have a redundant backup at El Magre Mountain, where we also terminate most of the VPN endpoints. So if we can't get to it via Thornton, then we'll get to it via El Magre. And so the overall goal here is to have at least 2 microwave paths into every site, so that if you lose a microwave, then you can fail over to the other one. But if we don't have 2 ways of microwave, then at least we'll try to get one type of commercial IP or some other way of being able to get to the site. Of course, in order for all of this to work, we need to implement routing of some kind. So IP obviously has routing built basically into its design. And so we employ OSPF, the Open Shortest Path First technology, to basically solve for what the open path is to every site. Because we have about 300 sites overall, we have found that OSPF is a good solution because it'll actually resolve the links if one of the links fails within maybe 5 seconds at most. So it's very fast in terms of the failover, and as the network grows, we have not run into any performance issues with OSPF yet. So that's kind of the technology that we've relied on. So for every site, what we basically have is a router, and then we have a local address subnet that we can connect all of the on-site devices to. And then also connected out of those router then is a direct connection to the microwave radios, which gives us the links to the next site over. And if there is commercial internet provider on site, we can connect to that as well. And we have very good working relationships with a number of ISPs around the state that we basically help them out at if they have network troubles at various sites. And so, we get help from them, and we help them wherever we can to promote a good neighborly activities there. Most of our hardware is made by a company called Microtik out of Latvia. They have an operating system called Router OS that's really just a custom Linux kernel, but they build their own hardware. And in that hardware, they have switching chips that will allow you to basically route at line speeds. The big difference between using their hardware and, for example, hardware from somebody like Cisco is that they cost about 1/10 of the price. And since we're operating on a ham budget, not a government budget, that's really important that we can actually afford things. And the nice thing about the Microtik hardware is that they are full-fledged routers. And so you can basically program any port on any router to be perform any function. In addition, they are very much focused at the wireless ISP market. And so they actually manufacture microwave radios as well, which we use to a large extent, although we also use microwave hardware from a company called Ubiquiti. And so, here's just a few pictures of the individual devices that we use. But let me actually show you some of these in real life. So let me stop the share and start pulling out some hardware. So this is our workhorse device. This is called a router board 2011. It's basically in a standard rack mount configuration. Has 10 gigabit ports here, as well as an SFP cage. And this is about $100 device. But basically, any of these ports can be used as a routing port, or you can map them to the local LAN and they will act as a switch. So you can connect whatever devices you want to connect to it at the local network. On sites that we need a little bit more oomph, this device is a cloud core router. So in this case, it has only 9 ports here, but this device can also run, thousands of VPNs because it has quite a bit of processing power, and so it just has a lot more compute power built into it for running things like VPNs at the same time. Depending on the site, we will actually get these with, instead of having Ethernet ports here, have them all SFP cages and then run fiber from here. As you obviously know, at many of these sites that are very RF hot, if you run long Ethernet lines, you're going to get all kinds of voltages induced in that and run into problems with lightning and everything else. And so what we often do is to actually run fiber up to the radio instead of copper, just to get across all of these problems associated with lightning and high RF and all of those kinds of things. But the really interesting things, of course, are the actual microwave radios. And excuse me a bit while I stand up and go and get some for you to show just from behind me. So this here is our workhorse. This is a 2-foot dish. You can see it has the MikroTik half moons at the front. And on the back here is the actual radio. So this here is, stepped on my keyboard. This is called a net metal. This device is a 2-channel radio. On the bottom, we have an Ethernet jack and an SFP cage. And so we can feed this either SFP, and then the Ethernet could also be used for communications or just to provide power to the device. And then on the top, I'm not going to take it apart here, but we have the 2 micro SMA connectors up here at the top that then run to the back of the feed horn here. And this is a 2-channel radio, which basically then gives you both an horizontal and a vertically polarized path over to your next site. With this 2-foot dish on it, and this is quite heavy, we have shots that go probably about 50 miles, and we still get signal quality of the order of 50 or 60 dBm in terms of and good connectivity throughout those paths. For some of our longer paths, we basically use the same radio. This is a 2-watt radio in the 5 gigahertz band. Although if you get the international version, you can actually operate this anywhere between about 4.5 and 6 gigahertz. But we basically can put it in the ham band and then operate it in the ham portion of the 5 gigahertz band, or because most of these are point-to-point connections, we will also operate this in the ISM band if there is a site that is relatively radio quiet. And then for the longer shots, I think our longest shot is about 90 miles. We will use a 3-foot dish with the same radio and get a pretty good signal over that path. For the most part, in all of these paths, we can easily move about 50 to 100 megabits per second without any trouble between these mountaintop sites. For shorter distance connections, we have these guys. So this device is called a light head grid. Basically, in here, it has an Ethernet port, and this both supplies the power and the connection to the site. And the entire radio is built into the front of this plastic feed horn here. On the side, you've got some LEDs that shows you signal strength, so you can use this to actually peak it. And then the back of the grid here is just a metal mesh. And it's called a light head grid because it hardly weighs anything. It's mostly made out of plastic. But this device will easily give you 5 miles or so connection at probably 30 gigabits per second, megabits per second, I should say, throughput. And this is a very easily mounted device for portable deployments. You can haul these around, and they're light enough that you can put them into a backpack and haul them up. This device will run on 12 volts, although we typically try to run them at 24 volts. They're quite happy at 12 volts, but with 24 volts, you can typically be less tolerant of low voltage dropouts, because once you go much below about 11 volts, these really don't really work very well. For slightly longer shots, this device is called a QRT. Oh, and I should have mentioned, this thing is about $75, and you can, I think the newer price is closer to 100 now, but it's a relatively inexpensive device. Again, make sure you get the international version. If you get the US version, you're limited to the ISM band. In the international version, you can basically natively move it into the ham band without updating the firmware. This QRT is a slightly higher power device. Again, it has Ethernet port right here. That is both for power and communications. There's a set of LEDs on the back that you can use. And basically, this is a dual polarized antenna inside this flat panel. And with these, you can easily go up to about 10 miles without any great difficulty. I don't have any examples of the 60 gigahertz stuff with me. They are actually a little bit more expensive. They are not much bigger than this. The mesh, of course, is much finer because of the higher frequency, and they are super hard to actually align because the width, the dish is slightly bigger, but the beam width is super narrow. And for those, we typically use the Ubiquiti higher power ones to get the longer shots. But the nice thing about the 60 gigahertz is that you get much higher throughput through them, right? It's no problem at all to get a 1 gig shot over, probably up to about 10 miles without any significant difficulty. The only problem that you have with the 60 gig is that it is a little bit susceptible to rain fade. Not as much as you would think. It has to be a pretty big storm before it starts fading, but it is much more sensitive to rain fade than the 5 gig, which really is unaffected by that in any significant way. So, of course, then on site, what we need to have is some IP-enabled sorry, you go. So what we have is some network monitoring equipment. We've got the site computers, all of the repeaters, solar controllers, and all of those kinds of things. And so typically the site computers that we have are DC powered, or we often use Raspberry Pis for many of those. We've got UPSs. The Lieberts are kind of nice, but they're awfully proud of them. We've got the power distribution systems, typically something made by APC, where you can turn AC power things off, or, for example, the rig runner, which you can use to turn DC stuff off, on and off. The rig runner is kind of limited in terms of its current. So for most sites, we will use this ICT device, which will basically do about 150 amps. So for higher power transmitters and things like that, that's typically a better choice. And then, of course, for some sites like Mosquito, that is solar powered, we use typically the Outback system that gives us the ability to actually monitor the system. So, for example, this just shows the peak voltage at Mosquito over time. And this is sort of an example of over the winter here, you can kind of see how the solar panels kind of get snowed over. And then, of course, this stops in December. But, once the panels clear off again, things improve. Some cheap SIP phones, SIP phones are available on eBay. So we typically just get those. Many of them require 48-volt power in order to run. But it is sure nice to be able to have these phones on site for in case you need to talk to somebody and the network is up, but your cell phone isn't working. And then, of course, IP cameras are very ubiquitous these days. And while they suck up a lot of bandwidth, it is really useful to just sometimes see what's going on at the site and what's going on. Of course, having a big site or network like this, what is really important is that we need to be able to actually monitor everything. So we have a device or a program called DevDB, and the purpose of DevDB is to manage all of the other services that we run. So it's essentially a master database of all of the other systems that needs to be managed. And so we're using that to configure our DNS, the domain name service. So all of the IPs gets translated to a name that's typically associated with a site, and then the kind of device that it's there. We use Radius for logins, so it manages all of the logins to all of the devices. It manages our network monitoring software, Observium, SmokePing, and Colmon that we use. And then we use a program called Rancid to actually back up the configurations for all of these devices on a daily basis. And FDB actually manages that for us. And then the other function that's built into DevDB is the ability to actually check the devices themselves. So we've developed a standard configuration that we apply to most routers, most radios. And so in FDB, we can make sure that that configuration is appropriately set, that the configuration points the radio to the right DNS server and all of those kinds of things. We can use it to check that the OSPF configuration, the firewall, and all of those things are set correctly, and so forth. But we also use it to actually manage our all Starlink repeaters, and I'll show you all of that here in just a minute. So this, oops, grabbed the wrong thing. This is DevDB. So basically, it's just a website that we access. And I'm currently in the definition that basically shows where all of the sites are. These are all of the links between the sites. And these are all the devices. If I go to the network statistics, you'll see that currently it knows about 260 different sites. Between those sites, there are 138 microwave links, and we've got a total of 899 devices that is being managed by the FDB. So if I were to go to a particular site, let's just take Devil's Head as an example. Basically, at that site, we know the information about that site, so what the local subnet is, the actual location of it in latitude and longitude, so that all of the SNMP devices can know that. And then these are all of the devices on the site. So we've got the router itself, there's an APC power controller, a phone system, there's a Blue Iris server that we use to feed all of the IP cameras to. There's a DMR radio. There's this is actually a P25 router, but you talk to it via a Cisco device, things like that. And then here's all of our other radios that are on the site. And there are the links to all of the adjacent locations. So a really important feature of this, and I should get logged in here so I can get access to everything, is this thing called the plugs out test. So unlike the definition that NASA uses, which means all of the plugs are plugged out of the spacecraft, we use this to make sure that everything is plugged into the router. So in this test, you can see what he did was it went and talked to the router and asked the router, can you talk to all of the devices at the site that I know about? So it basically checked that all of those devices are online. So they show up in green. It checked all of the microwave radios on this at the site to make sure that they are all up and communicating with their adjacent sites. But then it also checked whether the connection to the adjacent site is actually working correctly. And so in this case, you'll see that Badger is showing up red. So we lost power at Badger a week or so ago. And so even though the microwave radio pointing to Badger is up, since there's no power at the Badger side, everything there is dead. And so it's showing up that it cannot talk to the expected neighbor at Badger, so there's something wrong. What will sometimes happen is it'll show you here that this is in red, but it'll actually show you a long path to that device where OSPF has routed the traffic to that adjacent device by some other path. In this case, because Badger is down, that's not the case. But if you mess up something in the configuration of one of the radios, or OSPF is acting up, or whatever the reason is, it'll show you that this site should be directly accessible. It should be one hop away, and it's not. So this is something that you should fix before you leave the site. The other thing that you can do at this particular site is, for example, run a site frequency test. So we have of these various links to adjacent sites. This shows the center frequency and the bandwidth. But you can also look at this sort of in a graphical way and scroll down here to the bottom where it shows you each of the connections from the site, what frequencies they are using, and make sure that you're not stepping on yourself, right? So that you have multiple radios at the same site that have overlapping channel use and make itself deaf for all of those individual sites. The other thing that we can do with this is then go to a particular router, look at the router here and say, can you check the configuration for this router? And what it will tell me is, oh, you got a mistake in your configuration in this particular router, that the NTP clients or the NTP servers that this points to should be these two sites, and it's currently set to something else. Well, I can fix that by simply clicking fix, and the software will actually connect to the router, reprogram it to use that particular configuration, and then I can move on from that and show that that's now be corrected. I could also look at, say, please go and check my OSPF configuration for the site, and what it will do is talk to the router at this site, figure out its OSPF configuration, go to all of the adjacent sites and ask it what its OSPF configuration is, and check, for example, that the connection from Devil's Head to West Creek has the same path cost on both sides. They're both set to point and at a weight of 10, as opposed to having one set to point and one set to broadcast, in which case they won't talk to each other. So again, an easy way to make sure that that's all correct. It also checks that you've got the right filter set for which addresses you want to route and all of those kinds of things. The other configuration that we can check is the firewall. So this particular site doesn't actually have a firewall. So let me pick a site that does have a firewall, and I'll just check my house here. And if I go to that router here and say, check the firewall, it'll basically say, yep, I just went and through and checked the firewall. Those are the WAN addresses. These are the trusted hosts. So from that IP address, I can SSH into the network here and make a local connection. It's running the appropriate services, so it has the right ports open. And, it actually has, all of the firewall rules that we expect at each of these sites, and make sure that it's there. Or if you're first installing the firewall for the site, instead of manually doing it and perhaps messing it up, there's a button that you can get here that just says install the firewall, and it will simply go ahead and install the firewall for you. The other thing that you'll see is if we pick a particular site here, is that you're telling it how you want that to be managed. So in this case, I've said here that I am the contact here. This is a particular router that uses a peer DNS, so it uses an unusual DNS server. I want it in Observium. This is a MikroTik router, so back it up using the Rancid software. And then also include it in the smoke ping for, in this case, it's under the CRA smoke ping. But if the device fails, also send me an alert through smoke ping. But our main software that we use to actually manage the system is called Observium. So Observium is just a commercial network management software. If I were to zoom out a little bit, you can kind of see the extent of our site. So it basically extends down here to El Paso and to Buffalo, Wyoming in the north, and then basically east to west across Colorado. This site here that shows up as in Atlanta, Georgia, is a misconfiguration. I've tried to beat on Jeff to fix that for a long time, but somehow it never gets around to it. But basically what this does is it goes and talks to each of the devices on a regular basis, make sure that they're up. As you can see, when there's any errors that occurs, it'll detect that and then send us an actual alert, and the alert will be shown if I'm still in the picture somewhere. No, that doesn't show up. You'll basically get an alert on your phone that says, there's something wrong at the site, so go figure out what it is. But this is actually a very nice piece of software. So if I were to actually pull up a particular site here, you'll see basically it shows us all of the alerts at the site, but it also shows you all of the telemetry that it gets from the site. So if I were to click on the ports, these are basically all of the ports, the traffic that goes through that particular device. If I were to highlight this, you can actually get some detailed information about what the traffic over each individual port is. But if I go back to the main configuration, you'll see that it tells me, the temperature, the voltage, all of the SFP cages in there, their temperature, their power, basically everything that you want to know about that router, this piece of software will get for you. We actually use the enterprise version of this because we are a 501c3. The folks at Observium kindly has given us a full license for it without having to pay for it. But there's also a free version of the software that's available. The updates are just much slower than the full-blown commercial version, so it's a little bit slower in posting all of the updates. But very useful in terms of just keeping track of all of your hardware and making sure that it's still there. The other piece of software that we use is called SmokePing. Basically, what this does is it tests the time of a packet that's being pinged, and it stores that. So, as I've mentioned before, we lost the Badger site, and the Badger is on our route from the eastern slope to the western slope. And so if you look at the Bellyache Ridge router, which is near Vale, and you look at the last 3 hours, you see, oh yeah, well, we get somewhere around 30 to 40 milliseconds at most of those sites. Over the last 30 hours, there hasn't been much change. Last 10 days, that hasn't been much change. But if you actually start looking at the more detailed map for the last year, you can kind of see where things went wrong. So we were talking to that site and getting, around 10 or so milliseconds. Here, as it started to get a little colder, there's a little bit more variation in the noise. But then suddenly here, we lost the Badger site. And so instead of being able to talk to it directly from the eastern slope, we have to go the long way around to actually be able to talk to it. And so you can see that the packets actually jumped up by quite a little bit there, or the ping times. So this is a good way of keeping track of just the network connectivity. But if you're really interested in what's going on in your network, we've got another tool that's called CPing. So what this device or particular program does is this one happens to be running just up the hill here from me. And what it's doing is it's sending a ping out to every site every second, and then recording for me the return time in milliseconds. So if you see a number in blue, that is actually so many milliseconds. So you'll see that all of the near ones are shown in blue. So, they're sub 10 milliseconds. The ones that are shown in green are tens of milliseconds, and the yellow ones are hundreds of milliseconds. And then if it was red, it's thousands of milliseconds. Or if it has an X, that's a site that's actually down. So if I scroll up and down here, you'll see that Badger is showing down, but we were just looking at, for example, mosquito. So how are we actually getting to mosquito? Well, by simply hitting return, it will show us the actual trace route to mosquito. And so instead of going the way that we would have expected it, which is to go from here to squaw to devil's head to badger to mosquito, this is running the long path around. So you'll see it goes from here to Thoradin, then it jumps all the way over to Grand Mesa East, and then comes westward or eastward, Grand Mesa, Sunlight, which is Grand Junction, Glenwood Springs, I beg your pardon, Castle Peak, Bellyache, Upper Dowd, and then Mosquito. So if you look at the times here, you'll see it's, single milliseconds to Thoradin, but then we're riding commercial internet all the way over to Grand Junction. And so that's what adds it up into the, tens of milliseconds. And where this is really, really useful is if you're dealing with a network such as a P25 network that is really, really sensitive to jitter, because you are looking at this at the individual second time frame, you get a much better sense of how your network is performing. And so this is basically how we manage our network. We're relying on all of these tools to basically tell us what's going on. The point basically, though, is that we want to communicate. So how we communicate is we have repeaters at all of the sites, and they are all IP enabled to be able to talk. So for analog systems, we use these URIs. This is basically the interface that uses USB, then talks to the computer on the one side, and then analog over on the other side. The 2 here is the original one by DMK Engineering. This is the repeater builder version of it. Or in this case here, this is... I don't remember who made this one. This one here is also the repeater builder version. To just give you an idea of how big this really is here's an example of an actual device, right? It's about the size of, well, we used to say a pack of cigarettes. Today, I guess we'll say it's about the size of a credit card. And it has USB in on the one side, and it has a DB25 here that you can connect the radio to. The other device that we use a lot is what's called an RTCM, the Radio Thin Client Module. And this is what the Colorado Connection uses to actually do voting. So the voting receivers have several of these RTCMs. You connect USB to it on the one side, Ethernet on the one side, and then you have a GPS on the other side, and it timestamps all of the packets, and you can actually do voting of these where you have multiple receivers and then a single transmitter, and it picks the strongest signal to actually do that. Of course, if you have DMR systems, DMR just natively supports this, and we use third-party software called a C-Bridge that we can use to connect all of the different DMR networks together. Of course, all of this is software that you need to somehow configure and deal with. So we wrote a piece of software that we refer to as Megamon that is used to actually control and monitor what's going on an all-Starlink network. So this particular display, again, it's a web interface, shows up here the CRA network. So you can see there's currently no activity on the CRA network. Here is the Colorado Connection, and you can actually see there's a net going on the Colorado Connection right now. And so if it shows yellow here, that shows that the repeater is identifying, and hopefully somebody will transmit again. Yep, there we go. Here somebody is transmitting on the Clarendon repeater, we've got several voting receivers here, and you can see that the green one is the one that it's voting, and the blue ones are the ones that they are actually just listening to. The nice thing that we have in this particular configuration, and I don't want to do it right now because there's a net going on, but I can go in here, for example, and click this mute button, which will then mute that particular receiver. So if there's noise coming in on that receiver, I can simply go and mute it, and it's removed from the voting system so that the noise are not coming in. Of course, the other things that I can do here is actually to link or unlink the various nodes. And the nice thing about Megamon is that even though we have numerous clubs represented here, and they each have their own linked systems, this gives us the ability to, on an ad hoc basis, say, we've got a fire and we need to take one of the CRA repeaters, two of the Colorado Connection repeaters, and one of the UARC repeaters, and link them together. I can simply go in here and then unlink them from where they're currently linked, relink them together, and we have a new ad hoc system that we can then use for that particular subsystem. Of course, the other thing that we use is DMR. So here we see the Colorado Connection, the RMHAM C bridge. So where's my DMR radio? Since there is currently no activity. Come on. Motorola, of course, as you can tell by the tones. A C0KQ testing, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. As you saw, I was transmitting on SQUA, so it shows green, and then it shows me in red all of the different transmitters on which my signal was rebroadcast. Because DMR has two channels, the software will show you below for the second talk group and above in for the first talk group. So if I were to switch over from the one to the other, you would have seen things occur on the upper end. And so we can use this to keep track of all of the traffic on our DMR network here. So you'll see here, here I keyed up on the SQUA UHF repeater. I was on talk group 720. That was my received signal strength, and the length of the transmission was 4 seconds. So, a good way of actually being able to monitor and keep track of what's going on your system. The last thing that I'll show you before we shut it down here is that we have one more feature that we use the network for, and this is a system called Allfall. And basically what we use this for is to keep track of, for example, if we have people that are misbehaving on the system, we can actually keep records of where they're transmitting from and record their audio. So in this case here, this is in the playback mode. If I were to click here, that was just a legitimate transmission. Oops, sorry. A legitimate use of this particular frequency, so there's nothing particular going on there. But we actually record all of the audio that happens on the system. And so if there was ever an issue of either somebody misbehaving on the system, or there was an emergency and we wanted to do a post-mortem to actually figure out how well we handled it or anything like that, we can go back to those recordings. It shows you what particular receiver that came in on, and of course we can listen to the audio and make sure that everything was handled in an appropriate way. So I think at this point, most people will say, please, may I be excused, my brain is full. the key is that, this is a very large, complex network. We have a dedicated team of unpaid professionals who maintain it. We did get a pretty good grant from ARDC to expand this network even further. So right now, our only way to the western slope is to ride commercially IP and come back in. But the hope is next summer to actually complete a second loop on the southern part of Colorado, back through the San Luis Valley, to also have a second microwave leg out to the west. We're working, building our way out along the Arkansas, building our way up to the northeastern corner of the state, basically installing all of these microwave sites. And the way that we do it is by cooperating with some local amateur radio club that typically provides the site, and then we provide the connectivity to the site to then also, provide them access to the rest of the network, and assuming that they're using the right technology, have the ability to become part of this larger network. We very much stress public safety applications. So we're basically a backup to many county sheriff's offices. And, if there's anything like the floods we had here recently or wildfires, we're also able to then quickly adapt the system to whatever use needs to be made for that. And we practice that regularly by using, planned events, bike races, foot races, things like that, to actually then reconfigure the network and make sure that we're up to speed as far as how to use all of this. And of course, staying on top of everything is pretty much a 24/7 operation. We have some young men with great enthusiasm for the outdoors that we can send to some of these highly inaccessible sites to go break or fix stuff when either they get hit by lightning or freeze up or whatever goes wrong. So that's my summary. Sorry, I went a couple of minutes over. Any questions?
Willem, can you take questions?
Of course.
Willem, can you take questions?
Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, Willem. You've done a fantastic job of putting this system together. How many years has this taken you to get to the point where you're at?
We set up the first microwave link, I believe, in 2007, and it was basically between Squaw and Thornton. It grew slowly at first, but it's really done most of the, like for example, the westward expansion or so, in about the last 5 years or so.
Any other questions? Nobody has any questions. That was like drinking from a fire hose, and you guys understood every single bit of it. Okay, if there are no more questions, then we'll conclude. Willem, thank you very much for an excellent presentation. And it was good to see John Maxwell with us as well. We will conclude. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we're always happy to help and share whatever we know. So if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us, and we're always happy to assist.
Thank you. Okay, the moment you've been waiting for. Has everybody got their tickets in the bucket? Did everybody get a ticket when they came in? Would you like to do the honors, Mike?
Okay.
9 prizes.
How many prizes? Nine? 9 prizes. Shake it. Well, they're all mixed up in there. Then, Linda, 9 tickets, please. Okay. You know, I don't have my glasses on right now. I'm going to have somebody else. I just realized that.
I have to take mine off to read them, though.
No, I'm farsighted and you're nearsighted, so. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll
Okay.
tell you what. I'll just take the ticket and I'll walk over here.
Oh, okay. That'll work. All right. Yes. First one.
First one, KG7GOW, Rick.
Oh, all right. We have a winner.
We have a winner. Next one, KF7ZK, Bruce.
Okay.
Next one, KK7OXD. KD7YIU. John, N7MFQ, is it? Yes. There you go. Linda, N7HVF.
I think it's rigged.
I think it's rigged too. Mike, KI7MKI.
Definitely rigged.
Definitely rigged. K7DWP.
Okay. That's the guy over there.
All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Oh, one more, Linda.
One more, Linda. Draw your other one.
Just one, Linda. Okay, that was the first one she drew.
Last one, WA0PFC, Jack.
Why don't you draw again?
Draw again? Okay, one more. We can do this all night.
Yeah, all right. We'll get down to the, oh, that one there is nothing.
Well, that's,
Oh, does he have
okay,
it
this one is the wrong coupon, so we're gonna go by the number. The last 3 digits on it are 879. Who is that? No?
Oh, let's try another
Okay, one more,
Okay,
Linda.
Linda.
Okay, here you go.
That one right there.
Susan, N7OVG. And we're done.
All right.
Yes. Yes, the meeting for next month. We have been contemplating that it's time to hold an auction. We have a bunch of equipment that has been donated to us. We will hold that next time. I don't know how long it's going to go, whether we'll have a presentation with it as well. Check the website if you're curious about that. But we hope to see you next week, or next month. Yeah.
Hopefully have enough items that will take up the entire meeting. They will range from items of a maritime.
Okay, hold on, Jerry. The people out in the ether can't hear you.
So the February meeting. Okay, the February meeting will be an auction of some donated equipment. We have everything from maritime heavyweight boat holding devices to amazing